Ava is 6 months old. You look freaking awesome. Like you never
Thank you.
even had a kid. So like, what was that journey like? I mean, going from full on just working hard, then you have this kind of surprise, I guess. I'm gonna have a baby. Then you go through pregnancy, and then now your baby's 6 months old. What was the fitness journey in that?
So I've always had my own philosophy around this, and there's a lot of women that feel different ways, just be easy on yourself after, and don't feel compelled to get back into it after, and we're kind of like encouraging laziness.
Yeah, it's kind of weak.
And tolerating weakness and tolerating just not getting back on the horse and actually taking care of yourself. What I will tell you is I just always had this knowing that if I physically can rebound as quick as possible, it's going to help me rebound here. Because this is the thing that a lot of women deal with after, is that postpartum, anxiety, depression, your hormones are everywhere. And so physically exerting energy, just blowing some steam and getting that out of your system, it resets all of that.
Welcome back to the full
Welcome
podcast. What's up, bro?
Your host, Matt Tag.
Dr. Alfred Alessi. Man, excited for this one. Today we have an awesome guest joining us. Noelle Rodriguez is not only a friend, but also shares the same passions as we do in helping people to optimize their potential. Noelle is an entrepreneur, a speaker, a thought leader in the space of business and spirituality, and the host of the brand new Chosen podcast.
I love that name.
You also have a young baby girl, 6 months old, so you're balancing life in all planes. Noelle, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
We are excited about it.
Yeah, lots of new things unfolding in my life in the last 60 days. So this is definitely divine timing to come on, and you guys get to be the first ones to interview me this year. And
Let's go.
I only pray I'll have some more because I have a lot to say.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, thanks, guys.
Message. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, by the way, we stand up and she's in high heels, so
yeah, she's just a boss.
She's a boss. She is an absolute baller. Hey, you were in the office, I think probably 2-3 weeks ago at this point, and we had some amazing conversation that just kind of, you gave us a little bit of backstory, your journey, and then kind of where you are today. But we wanted to dig in right off the bat a little bit. You have a podcast, Chosen, right? And it really is the narrative of that story and kind of how you have how you're refining, how we're redeemed even through all of our some struggles too, and then just God, how God's amplifying. So just share some highlights maybe over the past, I don't know, weeks, months, years, how God has just refined and redeemed you.
Yeah, so I got to give you guys a little context so you understand how I got here. So I would say most of my life I was not really a true believer. So this is going to just make my story that much more profound to go from a complete non-believer. And my husband actually told me recently, since I've been on this journey and he's witnessing this, transfiguration of me. He said, I don't know if you remember this, but you told me one time that you didn't believe in heaven. And I don't even remember that. And he actually went into the other room and got really emotional, started crying because he's really close to his grandparents and they all passed. And he really misses them and he's hoping one day that he can be reunited with them in heaven, in the kingdom. And so when I told him that, it was just soul crushing because also I'm somebody he loves, and he was planning on proposing to me, not too long after that. So he's like, "Holy crap, did I make the wrong decision?" Yeah. So I started there, and then God has just been, he's omnipresent. He's everywhere all the time. He's never not listening. He's never not there. He's eager to, answer our prayers and meet the desires of our hearts. And it just took a lot of trials and tribulations and going down the wrong paths to be redirected to him. So I kind of got to a point in the last couple years where I was really in a place of desperation, constant disappointment, betrayals, just feeling kind of like this lone wolf in life. And I'm like, what do you want from me? What is all this? Why is all this happening? And I just couldn't seem to get out of this cycle. Kept repeating these cycles of ending up in the same place, especially around finances and my career. I was blessed beyond blessed and abundant in family and support systems and all these other things. But it was like, this was the one area that I was really strong held. And the enemy knew it was my weakness. And I kept speaking these things out loud. So I was giving him the ammunition of where to kind of attack me and keep me where he wanted me, which was stuck. So in that desperation, I found out I was pregnant right after my honeymoon. And I was totally not prepared for this. And my initial reaction was actually, I was terrified, which, most women would be like, what? I would kill to be blessed with a child and all these things. And
so were you planning like maybe to have a stretch where you weren't pregnant? Like, was that kind of the mindset?
It's always how it
then,
goes.
all right.
Yeah. I was like, babe, we're going to wait a year.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy our marriage. Let's travel,
Let's do our thing. Yeah.
And that's the thing, guys. We have our plan, but God's like, he's laughing up there at us because he's got his own plan.
That's right.
So, that was the defining moment. What I realize now, that was what initiated me into where I'm going to lead this conversation in a second. But I was just at a place financially. I was like, I have no idea how we're going to afford to take care of this child. And I was still kind of stuck in this mode of like being independent and not allowing my husband to be the provider of the house. And that, I was trying to heal and break free of that need to be also a breadwinner in my home all the time. I think what's beautiful about marriage is that we get to reverse those roles sometimes because life happens and we're a team. And so we got to be able to carry each other through different seasons. Yeah. So I just said, God, I have nothing to give. I have no idea how any of this is going to work. We were renting a house at the time. And I was like, well, we got to be out of this house. Our lease was coming up soon. So now we need to find a house to buy. Okay. And then, there were just so many things that I was like, it looks impossible. So I said, all right, God, I literally sat in that moment. I cried for a few days. I let it all out. And then I just prayed. And I was like, I need you to take care of all these things. And I was at a point of demanding. It was the first time I demanded from God. I wasn't begging. I was like, you need to make all these things happen. Yeah. And that was new for me. So a few months later, this guy moves into our neighborhood and he owns a contracting company. And I walk every day with my dog, and something just prompted me one day in March of last year to just ask him, do you guys have any residential properties you're building? And he said, yeah, we do actually. And I told him all our criteria, what we were looking for. He goes, I think I've got the perfect house for you. Went there, and I immediately knew this was the house. Wow. Like I just was overcome with a sense of peace and relief and just conviction. And even my husband could feel it. And so we ended up making an offer on this house. They ended up giving it to us in the price range that we were praying for. Wow. We ended up getting a mortgage rate that wasn't, no one was getting at the time. Yeah. I don't even know how we got it. It was obviously an act of God. We got an interest rate, and it just all started falling into place. And so for the first time in my life, this pregnancy that was unexpected, the biggest thing I could tell you that I learned from this was to trust God's plan for my life and to seek him as the provider, for him to be the one that you get your provision from and not put your trust in all these worldly things. What's in your bank account, what your job's doing, or if you even have a job. Like I totally was like, you're gripping like this onto all these things and putting your trust in them. I need you to put your trust in me.
Let go.
Let go. Yeah. And so gradually, he's like, I got to do this gently with her because she's going to lose it and go into the loony bin. So gradually I'm letting go. Yeah. And then I just get to this place where, a few months before I have Ava, I'm just so ready and I just feel joy. And I had more rest than I've ever had. I didn't feel the need to be doing all these things. And,
is there a significance behind Ava?
Is
it mean something in particular?
It does mean winged one. So I think of angels, winged one.
Winged one, okay.
And what's ironic is I actually was on Etsy when I was building my baby registry, and I came across this oil painting. And it was a woman, and she was holding a baby, And she had brown hair like me, and the baby had brown hair, and it had these little angel wings. And I was like, I don't know why, but I want that painting. And so we didn't know we were going to name her Ava at the time.
Yeah.
So it was just like kind of ironic, these
That's
little
cool.
synchronicities, you know?
Yeah.
So
Not coincidence,
my husband, right, not a coincidence, right? It's all God. But my husband was the one that came up with the name, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, Ava. I was like, I really like that. And we knew, and we're like, okay, let's keep saying it out loud again and again and again,
Right.
and make sure we like it, because we did that with one other name and we hated it after a few days. Yeah, like, no, this is not
That's
the
a good
name.
idea.
Nice. Try it out.
Yeah, try it out.
So all this kind of catapulted me to just seeing, okay, God, what can we do together next? And I started getting in this place where I was like, what would happen if I just gave you first place in all aspects of my life, including business? Clearly what I'm doing is not working when it comes to business and finances. So let me learn about what you have to say about these things. And so I started diving into the Word and actually reading the Bible and really meditating on different scriptures. And a girlfriend of mine at the time had invited me to her church. It's called The River. Revival Ministries. It's an international ministry, and these guys are the real deal. This is an extremely anointed church, and it was definitely out of my comfort zone the first time I went there. I mean, people are speaking in tongues. Some of them are overcome with the laughing spirit, and they're just like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And like, it's like, I'm like, whoa, what is going
you gotta
on?
warm up to that a little bit.
I was like, I wasn't fully there yet, but something was like propelling me to stay engaged, and I was curious, and I was like, these people seem so happy. They're dancing. They don't care what anybody thinks about them. And I was still dealing with like self-judgment, which we then project onto other people. So judging others, I'm like, I don't want to be like that. So I just stayed committed to going, and this church has changed my life. It has accelerated me in the last 60 days since I've been going. Because of it, I ended up going to healing school, which many of you listening have probably never heard of that, nor even have any idea what that entails. And we can totally dive into it. So I went to healing school for 2 weeks. I received supernatural physical healing in my body, a complete renewal of my mind. And I just felt this joy that overtook every part of me that I've never experienced. And when I reflect back in the last couple of years, I realized like the enemy had taken my joy, and it was keeping me in this very oppressed state of being, like spiritually and emotionally and mentally, because they all kind of interconnect with each other. So I was like, wow, it felt like new life. It felt like I could see for the first time, like I could hear for the first time. All my senses were amplified, like tenfold. Everything was vivid, so vivid and crystal clear. And
what was the separation of time between Ava and this happening?
So Ava was born in August, and I started going to the River Church in, I would say, October. Okay. Late October. Okay. I'd been asked several times, but I just didn't say yes the first couple times. It took her weeks to finally get me to show up for it. So, and then healing school, I just went to literally in January, first 2 weeks of January. Nice. And then healing school led me to become water baptized. So I got water baptized on the 11th. It was huge.
Big decisions.
Some big decisions.
I want to double down on, you said the word joy, right? And we love distinguishing between joy and happiness. Yeah. And you can tell you are a joyful person just like from knowing you and the interactions we have here in the office and stuff. You could be having 100 problems and you're like, figure it out, right? Like I'm not, it's not
I'm
gonna
like
stress
not worried.
you. Yeah. Whereas like happiness is the like, do what makes you happy. Like, you know, YOLO, that whole like culture is just toxic, honestly. And that's what leads people away from joy because they're trying to fill themselves temporarily with this stuff, right? Possessions, material. Whereas like if you're joyful, that is a state of being, not just like a feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joy is our strength, is what I learned in healing school. It's your armor. A heart that is whole and complete and fulfilled and spiritually rich is the medicine for our body. And there's scripture on this. There's so many scriptures actually about health and how to achieve it God's way. Jesus was our example. He became everything we are so we could become everything he is. And that's not And that doesn't, exempt, the abilities he had. Like, we also can access those abilities of healing people, healing people of incurable things, of physical things. And I witnessed and I heard so many testimonies from people that had been healed of things that the doctors were like, there's no way this is ever going to change, and you're going to be like this the rest of your life. Things that were quote unquote incurable. These people were leaving healing school and going to their doctors and saying there's no trace or evidence of this even existing in your body.
Can only be a miracle. Like,
right. I have goosebumps right now as I'm saying it, because like these people, they're still in awe, and it's like a miracle is happening to you and you're still in disbelief.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, wow. I said, I want to do that. I want to learn how to access that gift and that power, because the Holy Spirit lives in all of us. Like, this is the temple, this is the house. And that's why what you guys do, right, at Full Fueled is so important, is educating people about the temple, about the body, and like, how do we live longer? How do we increase the quality of life? How do we do things in more natural ways, and not just put band-aids on things or just treat the symptom? Like, let's really get to the root cause of what's going on, and let's nail it and, nip it in the butt. So it's just been really interesting to learn all these things. And, I still get people coming up to me saying that, just what I'm doing, it just like, they're scared. They're scared of what I have to say about this and what I experience, because they just can't fathom or imagine it. It's too unbelievable for them.
Because it requires change, and people get comfortable being in their position, right? Even if it's lousy and they're miserable, it's like, wow, like having to embrace change or like do some kind of hard effort, something uncomfortable, it freaks them out. And most people just stay still.
You know what's crazy though? I asked the guy the other day, because I want to go back to something you said that I thought was really cool. That we had, I'm discipling a few guys on Thursday mornings, and you had said something specifically, but taking precedence to that, like one of the things that I had asked another guy was like, oh, so you're okay with being average? You're average, right? Can you audibly say that you're okay with being average? Like, I am average. Like, I'm okay with being average. Like, no one wants to hear that, right? No one physically wants to hear the word, no, I think I'm a little bit better. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And so something I tell my daughter every night, I'm like, I let her finish the sentence, but I go, Genevieve, nobody is better than you.
Yeah.
And then she tells me back, but I'm not better than anybody else. And so it's big, it's powerful. She is better than everybody, but no one's better than her. So it's like this dichotomy that we play, but she's chosen. So I want to go back to this, right? Of like, when you were talking about your story, there was a point in time where you demanded from God. I think this is crucial, because we're going through a 40-day prayer challenge with Mark Batterson in my group. There was this one guy, right? The reality is there's witch doctors across the world, right? That possess this like crazy negative energy that they can impose through demons on stuff. So there was this village, I think it was in India or something like that, where this guy, he had a mainstay and they were doing some really, really great things. He was a pastor and a doctor there. So he was coming in and he had a ministry for obviously a health and spiritual. And but there was a big tree in the middle of this village, and it was just like it produced fruit one time a year, and it was just beautiful and casted a bunch of shade, right? And people would meet under this tree, so they loved it. A witch doctor came and saw all the things that were going on, and he cast a spell on the tree, and the tree died. It withered. The whole thing about our prayer challenge, right, is doing a circle. And so this pastor came out and he's like, "Look, I'm demanding from you, God, that I'm drawing a circle around this tree, and this tree is going to come back, produce life. And not only is it going to produce life, but it's going to produce twofold." So he tells the people this, right?
Seed of faith, right?
He's like, now it's not on me. It's not on me, because it's my reputation, but now it's God, it's your reputation that I'm putting on the line. You better make things work. I'm demanding this to happen, right? So what happens? The tree blossoms back, and it's the only tree of its kind that produces 2 times a year the fruit.
Wow.
So not only once, but twice.
Wow.
And so
It's
it's just
incredible.
the narrative of the story
crazy.
of there is that point that comes into people's lives where you demand, God, it's your reputation now. It's not Like, it's not on me. I have full faith in you that you're going to produce. So go ahead and produce. Like, I demand this out of you. So anyways, I got a lot out of that when you're saying
It's
that.
perfect that you just said that, because what I also learned in healing school is that what we tend to do is take ownership of things. It's all on me to make it happen. It's my responsibility. We take credit for things of like, well, it's all my hard work and sacrifice and dedication and sleepless nights that really got me here. And nobody's giving God the credit. We are prideful. We are self-centered. We are putting ourselves on pedestals. And all of that is, it's written about in the Bible of like, to put yourself beneath the Lord and to serve him and obey him, and seek him first in all things. And then everything you want will be added to you in such a better way than the way you're doing it. You're making life and things so much harder. And you're not supposed to take ownership of these things in your life, because your life is not even yours. You don't own it. I own everything that is in this world because I breathed and spoke a word and everything was created, right? In a matter of a couple of days, all in Genesis. And so God doesn't want us to own the things and have that responsibility, because remember, his burden is, his yoke is what is it? His burden is
easy and his yoke
is
light.
easy and his burden is light. You're gonna have to edit that.
That's real, man. That's all. That's
yeah. So
the point is there.
So yeah, it's and he's like, right now you guys are just making these things so heavy on you. He's like, you're meant to be stewards of the things I resource and I equip you with. You're not to take ownership. So really what happened when I demanded, that I didn't even realize at the time, was I let go of being the owner. And I was like, it's on you now. It's your responsibility. I'll just steward and go where you say and do what you tell me to do. And, I will follow your lead. And man, how liberating that has been for me, because I've always been trying to force things, and I'm always the one that's hitting the rock, right? We're not supposed to hit the rock, right? Or hit the mountain or push the mountain or figure out how to blow the thing up. Speak to the mountain. Speak the word of God over whatever thing seems like you can't overcome it or you haven't figured out how to, and let God do the heavy lifting. He just wants us to speak. He doesn't want us to hit. He doesn't want force, right? Again, back to, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And that is just, I feel like what I'm explaining now just really paints a nice picture of that. So
that's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And the being a steward of like your body, right? You talk about this all the time. This guy's the man when it comes to like, this is our temple. Like if we are letting it, if we're overweight and we're letting ourselves go like that, you're doing a disservice to it. Because then how effective can you be at spreading the word and whatever your path is that God's laid out for you? That being said, your baby's Ava's 6 months old. You look freaking awesome. Like you never even had a kid. So like, what was that journey like? I mean, going from full on just working hard, then you have this kind of surprise, I guess. I'm gonna have a baby. Then you go through pregnancy, and then now your baby's 6 months old. What was the fitness journey in that? I mean.
Yeah, so I've always had my own philosophy around this, and there's a lot of women that feel different ways, just be easy on yourself after, and don't feel compelled to get back into it after, and we're kind of like encouraging laziness.
Yeah, it's kind of weak.
And tolerating weakness and tolerating just not getting back on the horse and actually taking care of yourself. What I will tell you is I just always had this knowing that if I physically can rebound as quick as possible, it's going to help me rebound here. Because this is the thing that a lot of women deal with after, is that postpartum, anxiety, depression. Your hormones are everywhere. And so physically exerting energy, just blowing some steam and getting that out of your system, it resets all of that. And for me, like as soon as my OB was like, hey, you have, you're cleared for your 6 weeks, you can go work out again. I was already wanting to do it a week or two before. Now, obviously not at full throttle for, my pace before that, but I just wanted to move my body, and just start feeling better mentally. So I just started going back to F45 right away. That's one of my favorite places. It's the one gym program that's actually forced me to be consistent. Because I used to not really work out a whole lot. I'd go to the, like a gym and just kind of stand around and be like, what do I do?
Yeah.
But this just really forced
lost
me
in
to
there.
like, have like a very regimented, consistent thing. And it was already planned out for me, and I didn't have to be the expert on it. And there's trainers in it that'll come and fix your form. So I just started going back. I started being really mindful and conscious of what I was eating, because I was breastfeeding at the time. And breastfeeding definitely helps with losing that weight pretty quickly, I noticed. I only could make it to about 3 months with that, but I'm happy that I even got that far.
Yeah.
Because it's, a lot of people say it's easier, but in some ways it's harder, because it requires a greater demand every couple of hours from the baby. And, sleep is so important too.
Oh, it's insane.
I said, if I'm going to be the best version of myself for Ava, I need to also prioritize a little bit of sleep, and some people will say, well, it's not the time for you to put yourself first or any of those things. And I think that's so backwards. It's like, your kids are imprinting upon you right now. This is the most critical time in their emotional, mental development, and they are observing everything you do. They can feel things that are going on with you.
Sure.
And if I'm not okay, then that's going to mess her up in the long term, And it's the first 5 years of life where most kids actually get their trauma. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yeah.
First 5 years is where they learn these things that they carry with them after. And they're like, you know what? I don't really know why I'm like that, or where this anxiety comes from, or where this comes from. And it comes from when they were imprinting on the behaviors of their parents or the emotional state of the parents. So I was just really mindful of that. And I was like, I want to create and help build up this incredible human being. And I got to make sure that I'm good and I'm okay.
Yeah.
And we can't feel guilty about that. That's the other thing. There's so much mom guilt out there. You got to let that go. Because of the reasons that I've just stated. So just a culmination of those couple of things have really gotten me here. And obviously, realizing that the healthier I am, the more I'm able to actually channel the Holy Spirit, and the more spiritually rich I become. They go hand in hand. Yeah. So
Jim Quick, I think, says when the body moves, the mind grooves, and that's so true.
That's good.
Like whenever you choose to move the body, the mind's just naturally going to build that momentum along.
Right,
And
And
how
then
are
that's
you-
where I believe that the spirit lives directly within that. Also, quick plug: Noelle works at F45 Tampa Heights. She's like the nutritious brand ambassador for that location. She's my girl.
I walked
Appreciate
into
you.
it.
Come
I
on,
was
girl. So nude up, baby.
That was like a commercial, bro. That's cheesy.
I love it.
But what I was gonna say is, like, you're talking about, like, people are like, oh, it's selfish to try to optimize your sleep while your baby, for your it's like, how are you supposed to operate and be present for your kid? So my boys, I had twin boys. When they were born, they were colicky. They didn't sleep more than 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
I was so strung out, and so then my anxiety starts rubbing off on them, and they were anxious babies. Like, you could tell they were like
got
very
more fussy.
frightened. Yeah, and so it's
Yeah.
like, as soon as we could start dialing in sleep, we got them sleep trained or whatever. Everything changed, and so it's like, you have to be healthy for your kids.
Yeah, so
Amen.
that's one thing that I just I love the topic. So I was listening to a podcast. I forget how long ago. It honestly might have been like a year ago.
Yeah.
I forget the woman's name that was listening. Ed Milet was interviewing her, but she was talking about the epigenetic and postgenetic environment of a child. And so I tell a bunch of guys this when they have like a pregnant wife or pregnant girlfriend or whatever, the epigenetic piece of like how I am physically treating. I didn't learn this until my second child. So I was like, whoa, I'm like, that's crazy. But like the epigenetic environment, your hormones are just all over the place because you're obviously feeding, the nucleus of you're feeding an infant
Right.
child that's in your womb, right?
Yeah.
So in that epigenetic environment, like the reality is that the different emotions that we are corresponding with from just human energy,
Right.
to my wife, you are directly channeling that now to a fetus.
Yeah.
So like if you're tense, just freaking all the
Her
time,
feelings are now the baby's feelings. Yeah.
are now the baby's feelings.
Yeah.
And so because you're not, even though we have a birth date, really your conception's your birth date, because the reality is you're feeding this child, right? That then when your brain is kind of formed, it's being fed along the way. So this epigenetic piece of it's either intense environment or a very loving environment or whatever your choice, what you can put more of is the most benefit that the baby's going to get out of it. Then obviously then they live in a post-genetic world. So now they're seeing and perceiving and feeling, and they're in this like fight or flight state immediately when they come out, and they're figuring things out. And so we've even seen that obviously with 3 girls now. You have a 7-year-old who's like this freaking type A, stressed out. When Genevieve she's doing something with her sisters, she's like, she's real right up in there, right? Whereas like Melina, she's like, I'll figure shit out.
It's all good.
Like,
Genevieve
we're
will
good.
help me.
No, don't need to listen to you. Like going over here. And then Emery, if she could crawl back in my wife's womb, she would right now. Like she is so attached to my wife. But like this post-genetic world on how their kind of like relationship with people is kind of evolving. But it's such a beautiful thing to see when you can understand like, oh, this was, I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in the Tipping Point too, where we were born to in like time, like people are perceiving the post-genetic world in like the World War II era, completely different than us in like the .com and now like postmodern society of how we just have all this social influence all the time with like
bombardment,
100 different voices coming at you, and you got to figure things out.
We're completely overstimulated, especially entrepreneurs, business owners. It's like, what mentor do we invest in? Have I invested enough money? There's all these ways in which people say you got to do something in order to achieve what they've achieved. But the thing is we're all meant to, carve our own path and do things in a way that honors just the way God designed us to be. Yeah. And who knows, it could be a roadmap for somebody else, but it doesn't mean just because that's how you got somewhere that's the only way that someone can, get to success or whatever. So I always say, just ask God, what's the way for you? With success and all these things, and you won't have to deal with the overstimulation and the bombardment because you're tuning into one voice.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's the voice that's going to lead to greener pastures, prosperity, abundance, peace, love, all the things we all want. God doesn't promise happiness. That's where we go wrong. There's pursuit of happiness is a bunch of BS.
That's not in the Bible. That's
right?
Not,
yeah, it's not in the Bible. It's the pursuit of peace and security and abundance. And God is the source that provides those things. I just had to segue off the overstimulation.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I was like, I feel like that's just so relevant to that because
for sure.
I feel like someone needs to hear that so they can be like, oh,
I mean, we talk about it all the time, like that we're just like so distracted, like, right? Like, and so the way I see it is like when you're on your phone, like it's like you're living through this like clouded lens. You can't even take in what's around you. Like you could be in a waiting room somewhere staring at your phone and someone could be like choking on the ground over there. And most people like wouldn't even see them. You know what I mean? Because they're so like laser focused into this thing. It's like
my wife called me out last night. I was at home and
I call you friggin'
I was doing something because like I was like, oh, I can get a few things done. Her family's here, whatever. And she's like, babe, we don't want the least of you. Like, we don't want the remnants, babe. And
nice, Kelly. Good one, Kelly.
Dude,
called you out.
Like, call me out because I mean that is the reality. You just get caught up in the scene, and then where does joy come from? And that stems this morning. Something I was talking about is like if you can truly be present, like presence is where joy lies. It's not anywhere else. It's not in the future. It's not in the past.
It's now.
It's now, like right now. Like that's the only place you honestly can be like truly happy is if you're truly present and you can experience that level of joy.
That's living,
and it's powerful.
Yeah.
Let's speaking about that. What's the Female Powerhouse Project?
So this is kind of where I started my whole entrepreneur business career. It was the first company I ever started. And the intention at the time was to just create a sense of community that I wasn't seeing out there.
Beautiful.
I was like, I don't see anything like this. And so God was like, well, create it. I was like, okay, so I'm going to create it. So I actually, in the middle of COVID in July of 2020, at the peak of panic and the world's ending and zombie apocalypse and no one knew what to believe and everyone was fighting with each other, and it's just this is where our country really became divided. Is that was kind of that was the tipping point.
That was the plan,
And I made a decision that was extremely unconventional, made no sense, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna walk away from this medical sales career that I've just spent, 7, 8 years, giving my life to. And I remember my family and everyone, they're like, are you sure about this? And I was like, no, of course I'm not sure. But something is calling me. There was something in my spirit that was like, just do it.
Yeah.
And I've never had that kind of courage before. And so I left and I started, did my first event, and I said, what a better place to do the first event than my hometown. So people could really see me in this new light, and sold it out, gave, my first ever motivational talk. And from there, I started hosting events, selling them out. I had women from 18 to 56 years old in the room, which is, you don't see that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm like, there's something here that I'm onto. And so I just kept doing that. I did some other speaking engagements for some other things, and I started coaching. All these women were just so inspired about all these things I was doing, and they were like, hey, can you mentor me? And I'm like, I'm not a coach. So what I did was I started referring them to my coach friends. And then something started not feeling right about that. I'm like, something's off here. I kind of feel like I'm doing them a disservice.
Yeah, they clicked with you.
They clicked with me, and now I'm just like shoving them off to someone else. And so I prayed about it. I was like, is this part of my path? And God was like, yeah. So I launched my first program. I ended up selling it out in literally 2 days.
Wow.
I had no idea what I was doing. It was like, blind leading the blind, but you kind of just sometimes got to jump in the fire and you figure it out. And it ended up being those 3 women actually still today are some of my biggest supporters because of the transformation they had from that initial pilot group that I coached. So then I launched a podcast under that name. But it was like God is saying, you're meant to use your voice. It's one of your greatest gifts, and you are a natural born leader. I've always known that. I've always been the one to be like, I'll do it. I'll lead. I'll step up. Let me just handle it. Like, I've just always been that way. And so I started the podcast maybe prematurely, got my foot wet, and I was talking about things at the time that were like human design and astrology and a lot of things like you were talking about, that's really talking about the self and, not even giving any direction towards God. It was just everything toxic about culture today. So I ended up not being consistent. I couldn't get past my 8th episode. I just stopped. And I was like, I don't know why, but I just can't come up with content. It's just not flowing. And now I know why. It's because I wasn't supposed to speak about those things. Now I'm actually talking about what I need to talk about, and God is now raising me up. And so I have so much to say. Like, I actually can't run out of ideas now. It just flows, and it's on demand, and it just comes through. And sometimes I say things and I'm like, what? Like, where did that come from? And that's how that's confirmation that it's from God. This is the time now. I need you to double down on your voice in 2024. And that's what I've done. So Female Powerhouse, I buried it. That's the old me. I'm reborn now, and this podcast is a reflection of that.
That's awesome.
And so that's a very faith-focused podcast, also about business, biblical principles and integrating them into business, and then also motherhood, because I do believe becoming a mother for the first time is so spiritual and is definitely one of the closest times you ever feel to God, especially in that birthing experience. So it's kind of cool how all this just kind of came full circle and led me to here now. But I'm so grateful for Female Powerhouse. It's always going to have a sweet spot in my heart. I still have my original hat that I got printed, and people still rep the gear, and it's great. I don't have any hate for it, but it's my baby, and it's what perpetuated me to this place today.
And you got to know where you came from. I think I've actually this is deja vu for me, but you've got to know where you came from to know where you're going, right?
Never
If
forget.
you forget about what did Micah, who we had on our show, Micah Lacerte said, I was in the attic, right? He's like, I got to remember that attic when I'm living in the mansion, right? It's like, dude, that freaking attic is that's where you started.
Those
right?
are some of the happiest places.
That's right. And there's probably some
Take
good
me
memories
back
from
to
it,
the
right?
attic.
Oh my
Like,
God, so many.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can find joy when I'm like, how do I get myself into that state of joy again? And you just think about a couple of memories where you felt the most joy.
Yeah.
And then you just meditate on that and boom, you're back in that state. So some of those moments in my Female Powerhouse Project days really helped me tap into that for sure.
And so now the podcast is Chosen
Chosen
Podcast. I love that.
I
Yeah.
love that.
That's
I love
really
that.
cool.
Yeah, Ed Milet actually had us do something about that too. Like we had to go back to our highlight reel. He calls it the highlight reel.
Yeah.
And before he goes up on stage, he'll like run through his highlight reel. He'll be like pop 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 because you build momentum off of that, right?
Okay.
So
Right.
like if you go back,
Fire.
you got let's go,
Let's get it. I love that. Yeah. That's
right?
good stuff.
And so like as you're doing it, and like I had to, but mine are just a lot of sports naturally. I played a lot of sports growing up, and so I literally like this is what I do, part of like my highlight reel. But my highlight reel goes like me in 7th grade. I hit 12 3-pointers in a game. I was just en fuego, and I just
People don't forget.
I remember it like very clearly. But then like high school was the same thing. Then I met my wife. And so then these things that you can just like tap into that create and nurture that level of momentum that know you are chosen. Everyone is chosen,
Yeah.
right? So like that's how I go into like I just tap into that highlight reel and be like, dude, I'm chosen today. He let me wake up today. I'm chosen.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah, and the podcast actually is based off a scripture in the book of Matthew. That's really where I've been very focused, is book of Matthew. And it's scripture 22:14, and it says, "For many are called, but few are chosen." So everyone's got an invitation.
Yeah.
But what differentiates the two is that you willingly say yes to God's call for your life. You not only accept the invitation, you show up to the event, and you stay the whole time.
Yeah.
You don't leave early. You're there, you're fully committed, you're all in, and you're obedient. God wants our obedience. So that is where I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of in this discipleship now with Jesus, and I've just been learning about his story. And actually 2 weeks after I landed on the name and got convicted in it, a show came out at Angel Studios called The Chosen.
Yeah.
And I go, this is total confirmation. And it's all about Jesus leading up to his crucifixion and resurrection and all that stuff. They're coming out with the next season. And actually, I think today it comes out.
Soon,
So I will
yeah.
be watching
Wow.
it.
It's a good show.
But that show also accelerated me. I didn't really know Jesus like that. And I didn't have a love for him yet. And this just made me just fall to my knees and just fall in love with this human and this example of just how to walk through, this worldly life, which there's a lot of darkness and so how do you be a light full of valleys of darkness? And Jesus was that example. So now I'm like in this discipleship with him, of my own will. I'm like, well, that's what I'm calling it. It's a discipleship.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so that's really a little more context on the name and where it came from. And I just kept hearing it, and something would spark inside me. I'm like, chosen. And I guess you guys will be the first ones I tell this to, but I'm actually writing a book.
You had mentioned that to me, so that was going to be my next question. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I've
Floor
started
is
writing
yours.
it. And actually yesterday I had an experience with a girlfriend who's not yet saved. And I said, you know what, let me pray for her and suggest that. I've never suggested that to her. And the encounter was just like, wow. Because a few hours later, she sent me a reel from another podcast that's very faith-based. And she started asking questions, and I'm like, wow, I had a breakthrough today.
You got a little
and I
real
got
estate in her heart
chills.
and-
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, God's like, write this down. And I wrote 3 pages yesterday, just like started coming out of me. And those are 3 pages that are going to be in the book. So I know the book's coming, but I don't think I'm going to end up releasing it probably later this year, because what I have in my Instagram handle right now is showing you what happens when you give God first place in your life. And so right now I'm walking through that, and we haven't even seen like what is going to happen.
There's so
And
much
I know
more.
it's
Yeah.
going to be
Man.
mind blowing. So I'm like, let me show you, let me lead the way. Let me show you when you finally make this decision, what God's going to do and what he's going to move in your life. So the book is probably also going to be called Chosen.
Cool.
I've been like praying on the name, but I got to just stay consistent with it because
It's good for marketing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Keep them in the same,
Yeah.
the same realm. That being said, funny story, man. I think you're the only one who knows this.
She's a woman. She's a woman. You called her man.
Did I? I call everyone man, by the way. I call my mom man. I'm like, yo, what's up, man? What's up, dude?
What's up, man?
I was like, all right.
All right.
But funny story. So when we came up with the name for our
got
podcast, it
weird.
was God Anointed as well. And I know it might seem weird, full fueled, like I got. And my prayer was literally, we were going to play
Dude, it
golf,
was awesome.
and we had just had some
Freaking
really
awesome.
cool like conversations, and I'm just like trying to come up with a name in my head. I'm just thinking. I'm like, God, this is probably not even on your radar of podcasts right now. You don't care at all the name of my podcast. But if you want to give me something, man, like I'm listening. And then I started just typing stuff on my phone notes, and Full Fueled came out.
Full field.
Matt was
I
like,
love
dude,
it.
I love it. And I was like, I love it
love
too. Let's roll. And then that was the birth of it, man. It
Yeah,
was super,
that's awesome.
super cool. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the intention of life is to be fulfilled, right? And how do you get abundantly filled? And so that's why we operate off of our pillars within Full Field. Transitioning just a little bit here, because do you have another event? Are you putting on another event here soon?
So I'm actually, I was invited to an event. It's called Building a Boss Summit.
Okay.
It's happening here in Tampa at a location over in Waterside.
Okay.
And there's going to be a panel of speakers. I'm on their power panel. But this
Okay.
is the first time I'm speaking on a stage in almost 2 years.
Okay.
And obviously, I'm speaking on a stage for the first time as a woman of God. And so
And a mother.
and a mother,
Yeah.
go.
and just so many new things. And so I feel like this is my big, coming out reveal. And I'm actually one of the only speakers that is going to be faith focused in her
Sweet.
her responses. So I've been praying for everyone that's going to be in attendance there. I've been praying for the panel, and I really want to see a move of God while I'm in there. I want him to use me and do some things that people leave and they're like, yo, that girl is anointed and appointed, and I want to learn more, and I want to get the keys or access whatever she's got. I want to get on the train that she's on, because that's really my whole goal. I don't really care what I say. It's so much, how am I going to move people or impact them or touch them while I'm there? And how can I elevate God's name? I'm not here to elevate my name anymore. I'm here to elevate his. I'm just an extension of his hand. And so, it's part of that whole submission. And I'm really starting to understand what that means, that it's not weakness, it's strength. I think a lot of women have a problem with that. And it's again, the most liberating thing is to just be in that posture of submission and let your Father, your Creator, lead you. It's just...
Yeah.
It's unreal.
And hopefully people, in that will be able to see the Lord working through you, right? That's the whole goal.
Right,
Is like
just bear
living as an
witness.
image. Yeah.
Right.
Man, this was freaking great conversation. I got a couple things I just want to ask you, obviously, before we
Sure.
wrap up. One, where can people learn about you, find you online, Instagram, website, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Just kinda
so I
plug
don't
yourself.
have a website yet, but I'm on Instagram, which I'll give you guys to include in the show notes for this. The other place is just follow my podcast. I'm on Apple and Spotify. I'll also give you guys the link for that. And those are kind of my hangout spots right now. I'm considering getting YouTube going. I've gotten 3 different
Blake's your guy. So
kind of
we'll
nudges
plug
to
you
get
here.
on there, and I'm like, all right, maybe God wants me on YouTube. I don't know why, but if he says go there, I'm gonna go
Big
there.
platform. Yeah.
Big platforms. Right now, that's it. Like it's interesting. In any other time in my life, I would have told you, oh, I've got this website and a fancy landing page and all these things, and I've got these services, and I just don't feel the need to sell anything. I'm like, God gave me so much freely. I need to also give freely. And then trust him to provide in whatever ways he's going to provide. So I have no idea how I'm going to make money from any of the things I'm doing that are my calling. I have a full-time job that I work, and that creates some sense of security and allows me to, pour into my calling and to be able to do that without having to worry about money or have a fear of any of that.
That's
But
the entrepreneur hustle right there, right? Having
Right.
a job to support your job. Like,
right. So right now it's like the book I know, and I know the podcast, and those are the two places I hang out. So people can DM me. I'm really open to speaking to people. I'm not just going to like blow you off. I know a lot of people, they get these big egos and they don't take the time to respond to people, but I love having conversations and connecting with people. So those are my hangout spots
and
right
so
now.
it's Noelle C. Rodriguez on Instagram.
Yeah.
Noelle is spelled Noelle C. Rodriguez. Just wanted to make sure everyone has that, right? Because people are going to
Yeah.
be listening. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then Chosen Podcast, book coming soon, so don't hold your breath, but it's coming. I got one more question. This is what I always ask guests, and I'm really excited about your response. Full fueled means living your life optimized in all areas, right? You're fully fueled in this context, fully fueled to work for the Lord, right? And to follow the path. Our pillars are fuel, movement, sleep, mind, spirit, and work, right? And if you have all those optimized, you are fully fueled.
Right.
What does living fully fueled look like for Noelle Rodriguez?
Being spiritually rich. The richest, we've placed our concept of richness in monetary things and material possessions and money. But when you're rich in the spirit, in the Holy Ghost, I mean, you're richer than any billionaire on the planet. You're richer than Bill Gates. You're richer than all of them. Those people are spiritually broken. And so if you really want to reach your peak potential and live a fully fueled life, you got to get the anointing over your life, God's favor, and all those other things, all your other pillars will follow in suit. I think it starts with the spirit. It's an inside out job, right? And when you get filled with the spirit, Romans 12:2 your mind, a complete renewal of the mind, right? They go hand in hand. But we can't start here. We have to start in the spirit. Because the mind it's where a lot of us get trapped. Yeah. It's like a maze that has no exit. So if we want to break free of a lot of those strongholds and, toxic thoughts and things like that, then we've got to get this right first. So
that was awesome. She pointed to her gut for the spirit too.
Yeah.
Like you. I always thought spirit, I always thought like here, but he thinks gut. Like,
yeah, where does the spirit live to you? What do you think?
I mean, where I was pointing.
It's
like here.
Right in the gut, yeah.
I've always felt, when I feel things, I feel them here.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So.
I think there's a real feeling. Like, take it very scientifically. I was like, a lot of people, your heart and your brain. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I think it's like right there.
Yeah.
Like, I think the spirit right there.
It's in the center of the body.
Yeah.
That you get.
Yeah. It's close to the heart.
Yeah.
Your heart's actually lower than you think. It's probably like right there.
Yeah.
So.
But that's good stuff. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was awesome.
Super special show.
Love what you're doing.
Live full fueled. Live beyond limits, baby.